afternoon.
Just, if you would, just tell the jury who you are.
I'm Timothy Ray Jr.'s grandmother.
And that would make you the great grandmother of who?
Yes. Tamira, Elaine, Natan,
Gabe.
and Gabe.
Yes, ma'am. You took the stand a little bit earlier today. We had a hearing, and based on that hearing, we're gonna start at a point of your life when you got together with Larry Thornsberry. Is that okay?
That's okay.
All right. And he's your current husband.
Yes.
How old were you when you and Larry got married?
18?
Okay. And you're still with Larry today?
Yes.
Okay. But your relationship had its problems early on, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And based on various things that were going on in your life at that time, there was some drugs and alcohol involved with your relationship with Larry and your lives, right?
Yes.
Sometimes that bubbled over into violence between y'all.
Yes.
And one time you all actually got divorced, right?
Yes.
And while you were divorced, did you marry somebody else?
I did.
Who was that?
Phil Caliendo.
Caliendo? But you and Larry ended up getting back together after that.
Yes.
If you would tell the jury a little bit about your son, who you call Big Tim, right?
Yes.
And that's Timmy's dad.
Right.
And Timmy's mom, Cynthia, when they got together, they were living with you, right?
Yes.
And how old were they? Do you remember?
They were, I think, 19.
Okay. And when Cynthia was pregnant with Timmy, they were living with you, right?
Yes.
And tell the jury, if you would, about things that you started noticing about Cynthia when she became pregnant with Timmy.
She just, she went to herself. She was more like alone. She would go to the room and she wouldn't come out of her room after my son would go to work. He would come home and ask where she was at, and I would think she was there because I never would see her go out. And come to find out, she would crawl through windows and leave. And then one time he came home and couldn't find her, and she was in the closet cutting up all of her clothes, had all of her clothes cut up and was hiding in the closet. Just, just strange things. She was nutty. Nutty's fruitcake, bedbug, whatever you want to call it. But there was something going on.
But you cared about her.
I did. I loved her.
And if you would tell the jury about once Timmy's born, how did you see her, Cynthia's interactions with Timmy as an infant?
It was just, once again, it was a strange relationship. I was a mother, so I never seen her to be the mother that we normally are. You know how you cuddle your babies, if they cry, you run to them immediately. She didn't do those things. She would let him lay and cry. She would let him lay in urine, and I would have to attend to him. And then she would tell me, I wish he would just shut the fuck up. I mean, she didn't even want to hear him cry. She didn't really want any part of him.
And when she said that, and of course, everybody excuse our language, but when she said she wished Timmy would shut the fuck up, he was an infant.
Yes.
In terms of other things that she did to Timmy when he was an infant, in terms of dressing him and things, will you tell the jury about that?
Oh, it would be 90 degrees outside, and she would put him in flannel jeans and a flannel shirt with a t-shirt. And I'd be telling her, Cindy, it's so hot, he would be sweating. His little hair would be wet with sweat. And she'd say, he needs to be covered. His body needs to be covered. She would bath him in cold water. She would give him laxatives to cleanse his body. She would not feed him because she didn't want a fat baby. I mean, she just let him cry constantly.
And did you ever get to the point where you thought it was unsafe for Timmy to be in her care?
Oh, I did.
And did you sometimes not know where she was with Timmy?
Lots of times I didn't know where she was at with him.
Eventually, Big Tim had Cynthia committed, is that right?
Yes,
And when I say committed to what?
a mental part of the hospital.
Okay. And that was as a consequence, I guess, of the things that you told the jury about.
Right.
Big Tim and Cynthia's relationship obviously started falling apart.
Very
Is there-
much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Was there, did they begin to fight and argue over custody of Tim?
I didn't see that part, but I know there was a lot of it because Tim would find her and he would bring little Tim back. And then she would come back for a day or so. And as soon as he would go back to work or something, she would take little Tim and off she'd go again. And then he might not find her for another week or so. I mean, it was just on and off.
Yes, ma'am. And did Big Tim eventually get custody of little Tim?
Yes.
And did the police eventually have to get involved because of the custody issue?
Yes.
Can we tell the jury about that?
Her and her sister came to my house and they were going to kidnap little Tim. And she was upstairs talking with me, and while the sister said she needed to go to the bathroom, and she went into the bathroom and tried to crawl. She crawled out the window with the baby and was going over the fence in my yard, and my daughter stopped her, and the police were called, and her and Cynthia both were arrested. And we had little Tim, though. She didn't get to take him that time.
And he would have been about how old at that point?
Probably at that time, he was probably maybe a year and a half old, 2, somewhere in that area.
When Big Tim gets legal custody of Timmy, that sort of means by default that you have custody of little Timmy too, because you're one of the.
They were with me, and I watched Timmy when my son worked.
Okay. So at that point, you're the closest thing that he has to a mother. Is that
Yes.
As he's growing up with you and Big Tim and Larry, of course, right? And other family members.
Right.
There still is in your family, based on a variety of issues, people have issues with alcohol and drugs, right?
Right.
And there are times when it bubbles over into violence.
Yes.
And in the sort of the mid 1980s, as Tim's growing up, there are times that the police have to come to the house, right?
Yes.
And that's for things like fighting,
Yes.
and at least on one occasion, a shooting,
Yes.
and issues involving drugs, right?
Yes.
And those are things that Timmy was around as a young kid.
Yes.
Now, I know you've told me in the past one of the strengths of your family is that people can get into very heated fights and arguments, and then they get over it, right?
Correct.
Who in your family couldn't sort of do that?
Little Tim.
Right. And why do you think that was?
He just had his own little way, you know. If things didn't go his way, then he didn't like you that day. He didn't talk to you.
So would he shut down?
Yeah, he'd shut down.
Did he seem more sensitive and delicate to you than other people?
He was very sensitive when he was little.
Did he talk to you a lot about where his mom was?
He asked a lot for his mom.
And at that point, I guess you didn't have any idea where Cynthia was.
I didn't.
What about Timmy growing up and friends? Did he have a lot of friends?
He didn't have a lot of friends, you know. No, not a lot. He was more to himself.
Do you remember having birthday parties for him where friends came over?
Not so much friends, but we had such a large family that we didn't have to invite friends. We'd have 20, 25 kids just with the family.
Tell the jury about your impression of Tim growing up in terms of his, I know you always say he's smart, but about him being sort of gullible and
He was, but he was so intelligent. He was smart. And he was just, you know, he believed, you know, so much, you know.
Did you did you get the impression that he just would believe things, though, without investigating very much? I think you told me about
Yes, he would.
infomercials.
He would, he even believed that you could feed the VCR. He would try to feed it dog food because it had an opening on it. That was a mouth. I'm like, no, that's not a mouth. You cannot feed the VCR dog food. So he had,
Who was Elaine? Tell the jury who Elaine
Elaine was my daughter.
And how far apart in age were Elaine and Tim?
2 years.
Okay. So they were close, I guess, growing up?
Yes.
And tell the jury what happened to Elaine.
Elaine died of cancer when she was 29.
Timmy was about 13.
Yes.
Was that a pretty big blow to your family?
Oh, yes.
And I think I'm right that your daughter Elaine, who died, became the reason why Timmy and Amber decided to call Abigail Elaine. Is that right?
Yes.
When your daughter Elaine died, she had 3 children.
Yes.
And what happened to those 3 children?
It was a nasty court battle. I fought their father for custody, and the judge basically said he wasn't a good dad, but he was their dad. And it was all they had, so he put the kids back with him, but I ended up literally getting the kids later because as they got older and they started getting in trouble, he would just drop them off one by one.
Did you have some problems with their dad?
Oh, yes, I had to get an order of protection against him. He would call me up and threaten me that he was going to kill me and numerous things.
And that was a time when Timmy was living with you, right?
Yes. Well, Timmy wasn't living with me, but he lived close to me. He was there a lot.
Okay. Because he was back and forth, I guess, from your house to Big Tim's.
Right.
You remember the car accident that Timmy got in when he was 15?
Yes.
And tell the jury what you remember about that.
I just remember my son telling me Mom, Tim's been in a bad accident, and we went to the hospital, and then he appeared to be okay as far as we knew.
Yeah. And did you think that Timmy changed from the car accident?
Not really. I just thought Timmy was becoming a teenager. I seen the place on his head that never went away. I was always concerned about that, but my son assured me that the doctor said that he was okay.
Yes, ma'am. And so, the things that may have changed about him, you attributed to being a teenager.
Right. I mean, Tim did a lot of silly things, but it was always like, he's getting older. It's just part of growing up.
Yes, ma'am. But before, he'd been a good student, sort of a
He was always a good student.
Yeah. And then afterwards, he had a little trouble more in school. And you knew that he got arrested for some things.
Yes.
And you knew that he tried to get into the Navy, right?
Yes.
And was that a strange choice, did you think, for him?
The Navy?
Yes, ma'am.
No, because he was, he wanted to be, something special,
Yes, ma'am.
So it wasn't a strange choice. I was just shocked that I never knew why he got out of the Navy.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I always was told from him that it was something to do with his ear because he couldn't hear. I did not realize that it was because of mental conditions. I didn't know that
Okay.
until just recently.
Yes, ma'am. Timmy goes to prison for the things that he was arrested for, right? I'm sorry. Ms. Thornsberry, just say yes or no so that the court. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the jury the biggest change you see when Timmy comes out of prison. What's the biggest change in him to you?
The religion.
And tell the jury what you mean by that.
When he came out of prison, it was just like everything was about the Bible. I mean, he couldn't talk to you without it being involved in the Bible. He would tell me, the church I was going to, the religion I believed in, I wasn't going to get to heaven, that I needed to go to the type of religion that he was in. I needed to learn how to speak in tongues. And I just told her, I don't believe in that. You know, that's not the way I was brought up. So, I mean, but he really tried to force the religion. It was just constantly, it was religion.
And was he aggressive about the way that he presented it to you?
At times, yes.
And do you remember him? You remember him speaking in tongues?
Yes.
And I think in the past you told me that you felt like he had been pulled in by a cult.
I did. That's the way I totally felt.
And did you get the feeling as though he thought that he had a superior knowledge to other people about religion?
Yes.
What about reading the Bible to the kids? I think by that point, Mira and Eli were born.
He read the Bible to his children all the time. I mean, there was, you know, they weren't allowed to watch TV. They weren't allowed to listen to music and stuff. I mean, it was all religion.
And do you remember thinking to yourself that you thought the kids might like some normal kids' books?
Well, I remember I wanted to buy Mira some little capris and little shirts for the summer, and he literally told me to go to the part of the store I was at and look at the restroom and tell me what I seen on the doors. And I'm like, I see stick people. He says, what do they have on? I'm like, well, you know, the little boys got like pants on, I guess, and the little girls like a dress on the women's washroom. And he says, that's because that's what they're supposed to wear, Grandma. And I just thought that was, you know, so strange.
Yes, ma'am. Did you talk to him about your concerns about his religious beliefs?
There was no talking to Tim about what he believed in religion. No.
Did he? What did he do? He would just shut down.
He shut down and wouldn't talk to me for a while.
If you would, Miss Thornsberry, tell the jury about a visit with Cynthia down in Mississippi. And Cynthia, again, is Timmy's biological mom.
Yes.
But none of you had seen her since when?
I had not seen her since he was like 2.5 years old, 2 years old. And he just kept insisting, in his mind, he thought that his dad and I had hid her away from him and wouldn't let him see her. And I always tried to tell him, this is not true, Tim. Your mom was sick. But he wouldn't have it. So finally, somehow I found out where she was at in Syracuse, New York. And so I called there and I talked to the hospital, and they told me that I couldn't talk to her, that they would get a message back to her, and she called us. And then my son arranged for her to come to Mississippi to see little Tim. So she came to Mississippi to see little Tim, but when she got there, he didn't want no part of her because he's seen just how sick she was, and he didn't want her around his kids. So she ended up staying at my house for like 5 or 6 days because that's where she wanted to stay. I mean, and I slept in my room with a chair up against my door. I was afraid of her.
How'd she look to you?
She looked, when she got off of the bus, she had on men's trousers and had a like rope tied around them and a man's shirt and men's shoes. And she was very, very heavy, overweight. She just looked like she had never been taken care of.
Did you recognize her at all as the Cynthia that you'd known back in
No.
1980? At this time, you were living in Mississippi around this time with
Correct.
Mary, right? And your son, Big Tim, is living in Mississippi as well.
Correct.
And little Tim and Amber are living in Mississippi.
Correct.
And they have Mira, Eli, and Natan at that point.
I'm not sure if they had, yeah, they did have Natan, I think.
Yeah. And they lived down in Starkville, Mississippi, I believe, right?
At that time, I think they were still in Fulton, Mississippi.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think it was Fulton.
But they would come sometimes to Amory, where you lived, to visit, right?
Yeah.
And tell the jury about the visits and who liked to come spend the night at your house.
Oh, well, he wouldn't let any of the children spend the night with us. But when the summer came that he was no longer with Amber and the kids came down, my son would let the kids come and spend the night with me. Mira would come and she'd bring her little backpack and, her little pajamas and stuff. And she would spend the night. Eli would come. He would spend the night the next night. And then it would be Natan's turn. And Natan would come over and he would stay for a little while. And then he'd say, Granny, I want to go back to my papa's house at the big house. I want to go to my papa's. And he wouldn't stay, and I'd have to call my son Timothy to come and pick him up.
Because that's who Natan was talking about, his papa, his big
Papa.
Tim.
Papa, he called him Papa.
Yes, ma'am. Will you tell the jury about Eli's garden at your house?
Eli, he would come and spend the night with me, and he would stay in the daytime with me. The one time we were doing some yard work, and I had a lot of little pavers and stuff. And he's like, Granny, let's build a garden. And I'm like, okay, let's build a garden. So he carried all the rocks, and he put them all around this tree. And now we call it Eli's garden.
Okay.
And he worked so hard at this little garden. And he picked all the weeds out of it. And we planted the flowers. And now there's 5 little angels in that garden.
Sorry. Take a deep breath.
So this line of questioning is not relevant to what we're reporting.
Sean, I didn't hear what Sean did.
He says it's not relevant to what we're presenting on right now.
I'm going to move on. Just
Okay.
talk to you.
Fair enough. I sustain the objection
Yes, sir.
going forward.
Matt from attorney.
Yes, you may.
All right. I'm just going to ask you to identify some parameters that you can identify some pictures. And not put on some numbers on it for but this would be defendants marked for identification purposes. 139, 140, 141, 142, 144, 146, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 157, 158, 160, 162, 163, and 164. Are those pictures that you looked at before?
Yes,
And are these
family pictures.
family pictures? Thank you, ma'am. I would offer evidence. Permission to publish these before.
Subject to objection we made in our hearing as to relevance, your objections noted, they are be allowed in over that objection.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Thornberry, I'm just going to put some pictures up on the screen, and if you'll just tell the jury who's in the picture and anything that comes to your mind about that person or that time. Is that all right?
Yes. That is Cindy. That's little Tim's mother.
And do you remember where that picture was taken?
That picture was taken at my house. That was her baby shower
Baby shower for little.
for little Tim.
All right. That's 139. This is 140. Who's that?
That is my son Timothy and little Tim.
Okay. This is 141. Who's that?
That is my son Timothy and Cindy and little Tim. And somebody's head there. I think that was at a Thanksgiving dinner.
But that little Tim is
That's
the
little Tim sitting in Cindy's lap. Yes.
How about that?
That's my son and little Tim.
All right.
The number 142.
I'm sorry, 142, yes, sir. And this is 144.
Who's that?
That's little Tim and myself.
And where was that taken?
That was taken out on the boat. We were boating.
Yes, ma'am. This is 146. Who's in that picture?
That is my son Larry and little Tim playing around at my house.
And that's little Tim in front?
That's little Tim in the front, yeah.
And
Larry Jr. in the back.
And tell the jury about Larry Jr.
Larry Jr. got killed when he was 23 in a motorcycle accident.
That was 146. How about, this is 148. Who's
That's my sister and Mira.
And was that at your house?
Yes.
And this is 149. And I think you talked about this, but
Oh, that's little Tim, Amber, Mira, Eli, and that's Cindy.
that's
That's
mom.
his mother.
Okay.
That's when she came to my house.
Yes, ma'am. And I think 150 is just another picture from that
That's-
visit?
Little Tim, his mother, and Eli and Mira.
And this is 151. Tell the jury who's in this.
That is Jackie, my granddaughter, and that is Mira. I think Eli's over on this end. That's Natan, and that's Gabe that she's holding.
Dave's the little,
And that's myself.
right. That's somebody's birthday?
I think it was my birthday or some, I don't know. It was somebody's birthday. I think they were all singing happy birthday to me.
And this is your home in Mississippi?
Yes.
I'm going to show you 152. Who's that?
That's Mira and myself.
And how about 157? Who's that?
That's Mira.
At your house?
That's at my house, yes.
And who's in the red there?
That's Amber.
I'm going to show you now 160. Who's, I know it's a little blurry, but tell the jury.
That is myself and Elaine.
Where were you?
This was in Atlanta.
And 162.
That is my husband. That is all the great grandbabies and myself. We're all in the bed together.
But Elaine,
This is in Atlanta.
that's the same from Atlanta as well?
Yes.
Elaine's not in that picture though.
No, Elaine wasn't in there. She was asleep on the sofa.
And then the last one I want to show you is 164, which I think is the same trip. But is that everybody?
That's the same trip, and that's with my husband. That's all of us in Atlanta. Yes.
The trip to Atlanta, that was in August of 2014, is that right?
Yes.
And that was very close to the time of the babies, as I think your family referred to them, the baby.
The trip to Atlanta was, we went there to meet Tim and the grandbabies, and first of all, he was late showing up, and we waited. And then when I seen him, he had lost so much weight, and he had on a hot pink shirt, and his shirt was drenched with sweat. And I'm like, why are you sweating like this? And then he was drinking, and he was smoking cigarettes, and I had never seen this from him before. I had never seen him drinking, and then we went there, and him and my husband went to get pizza because everything was closed, and they walked to get the pizza, and Tim came back, and he said he was going to get the car and go back and pick up my husband. Well, my husband called and asked me, he says, where's little Tim? I'm like, well, I don't know, he come to get you. And so my husband walked back, and little Tim showed up after that. And once again, he was just so wet with sweat, and just, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. I mean, just intuition that you know something wasn't right. but you couldn't put your finger on it. And we tried to get him to let us bring the youngest children home with us because he was supposed to come down the end of that month or the next month, somewhere in there. But anyway, we tried to get him to let us bring the ones that weren't in school. And he told me, he says, Grandma, I can't be away from my babies. And he wouldn't let us bring them.
He told the jury about when he came back to the hotel late that night, what he said about Elaine.
Well, he asked if we'd watched the kids while he went out that night. And I'm like, well, yeah. And then the next morning, he was there and he says, Grandma, he says, you're not a very good babysitter. He says, I came back at 3:30 and Elaine was behind the couch screaming and crying. And I'm like, really? You know? And I, didn't go into great details with him. But then I asked my husband, I'm like, Larry, was Elaine not in the bed with us? And he said, Roberta, Elaine was in the bed with us. She wasn't in the living room screaming and crying. He said she took a nap in there, but after that, he says, Elaine slept when we got ready to go to sleep. We put her in here too.
Miss Thornsberry, if you thought that the children were in any danger, you'd have done something.
Oh, I would have, yes. I would have, if I had to fight him or whatever, or call the police or whatever, I would have, never let him touch those kids if I thought they were in danger.
Yes, ma'am. May I approach again, ma'am?
Right.
Miss Thornsberry, I just want to show you what the mark for identification purposes is. That's exhibit number 138. Do you recognize that?
Yeah.
I think
That's a video of Atlanta.
of the trip that you were just
Yes.
describing. Your Honor, I ask you to move defense exhibit 138 into evidence and publish it as well.
No objection.
No objection to 138.
Do you remember who's in this video for the most part? Do you remember, Ms. Thornsberry?
The grandkids, little Tim, myself, and my husband.
Before we play it, I guess that's little Tim in the pink
That's
shirt.
the pink shirt I was describing, yes.
And then who's on the couch there?
That's me with Elaine, and Mira's in front of her dad.
And are you and your husband Larry the only members of the family that ever met Elaine?
Yes.
All right, we're gonna play it if that's all right with Your Honor.
Our secret is out. For true radiance, you need strength and beauty. So for radiant style, I use new True Radiance. In just 5 days, it cleans, whitens your hair, and strengthens enamel. Be truly radiant. I just assumed I was getting crushed on food that had really is the first ingredient. It was one of the big name brands I've had for years. Chicken pie. That's why I switched him to Blue. And dog food, so things like chicken pie. You know, I talk about feeding my Jake like he's a member of the family. This isn't exactly what I feel like.
When pet parents learn the truth about pet named dog foods, they switch to Blue Buffalo. All Blue Life Protection foods are made with the finest natural ingredients of Real First.
I know it's tough, Ms. Thornsberry, but I appreciate you sharing your memories with the jury. And I think somebody from the state might have some questions for you, okay?
Thank you.
Graham.
Ms. Thornsberry, I'm sorry you have to be here today.
Thank you.
The video that we just watched, that was in Atlanta. in
Yes.
August. Do you know when in August that was?
I think it was like August the 3rd.
August the 3rd?
was early August.
And your grandson Tim had come and met you all in Atlanta.
Yes.
How many days did you all spend there?
Pardon me?
How many days did you spend there?
Did we stay there?
Yes, ma'am.
Just overnight?
Just that one night. Took the kids to the aquarium.
No, we kind of thought we were going to go somewhere with him on Sunday, but when he got up Sunday morning, he was ready to leave. He had already checked us out. And he was ready to leave. We had breakfast and then he left.
And I think I read somewhere that he was drinking that night.
He was drinking that night, yes.
That was something new that you hadn't seen.
Right.
Since then, you've learned that he was smoking spice. Since
I have heard that, yes.
you didn't know that at the time.
No, sir.
Was he smoking cigarettes at the time?
Yes, sir.
Did he ever explain to you where he went during the time that he disappeared and left your husband at the pizza place?
No, sir.
So you don't know what he was doing?
No, sir.
When he came to Atlanta, did he seem happy to see you?
Yes, sir.
And you were happy to see
Oh, yes.
your great grandbabies?
Yes.
And how did Tim get along with your husband?
Very good.
They got along well?
Very well.
Tim was happy to see him?
Oh, yes.
And Tim, I saw in the video, it looked like there was a lot of noise. I guess the TV was on.
If they were playing music,
So that's what Tim was paying attention to, I guess.
probably.
But he did play with the children, right?
Yes, he did.
And he smiled and he laughed.
Yes.
So since Tim was born, honestly, you've been his mother.
Tried to be.
You've done the best you could.
Yes.
Tim Sr., his dad, loves Tim.
Very much.
The whole family loves him.
Yes.
In fact, he said that he didn't have a lot of friends, but he's had so much family.
Right. We had a large family.
And there may have been some chaotic times, but there were a lot of good times too, weren't there?
More good than bad.
There was a question about the car wreck when he was 15, and you remember that, and he got that skull fracture.
I do.
And as far as his intelligence, the way he behaved, and how he interacted with people, you didn't really see a difference in the way he was after the wreck
Well,
before the wreck, is what I heard.
He was different after the wreck, but I think that's because he had gotten in trouble with his dad and just, he was getting older. So, he was a teenager.
15 going on 20.
Right. So,
Earlier, I heard you say that he was special and he could do anything he wanted. Is that right?
he was.
He was very goal-oriented. He would set a goal for himself, and then he would work to make it happen. Correct?
Yes.
He went to school. He did well. He succeeded.
Very well in school.
Very smart. There's no question. Very smart.
Very smart. We were very proud of him.
Very proud of him when he graduated with honors
Very proud of him.
from Mississippi State.
So proud of him as a person, as a father. He was a great person.
Was he the first one to graduate from college?
Pardon me?
Was he the first to graduate from
Yes.
college? And then when he got his job at Intel,
My husband was so proud to just drive by that place.
and you knew he was working as a validation engineer, I'm sure he told you, right?
Yes.
Part of the team.
Oh, he would try to explain it to me.
You never heard of him get in trouble, any kind of behavior problems at work.
No,
or in college?
no, sir.
When he married Amber and wanted to have a good marriage. That was one of the goals I think he told you.
They appeared to be very happy.
You said that after he came out of prison, though, I guess he found religion,
Yes,
and that his beliefs were different than how you all had raised him.
right.